Our next guest is an MMA legend in the welterweight division. You know him from his battles with Matt Hughes, Dennis Holman, and Jason Miller. It's a pleasure for us to welcome Frank Twinkletoes Trigg to Submission Radio. Frank, it's a pleasure having you on the program.
Thanks for having me in. I think this is actually, you guys are located in Australia, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the first time I've actually been on radio in Australia.
There you go.
It's an honor.
We love when people say that because we love to be people's first, especially obviously in Australia. You know, the Australian fans love it. You know, let's get into it, Frank. For those who haven't heard much from you in 2015, what has 2015 been like for you, and what kind of projects are you working on at the moment?
Well, I made a pretty significant change in my life. I had to make a decision as to what I was going to do financial-wise, like how I was going to earn my money. You know, I'm not fighting anymore. I'm not doing, I'm not part of the game. So, of course, as some people know, I was commentating quite a bit. And then that market kind of fell out where the UFC kind of owns or bought up all the companies. And they were on the broadcast team, so it kind of put me off. And then so I had to make a decision what I was going to do. And I decided to move into stunt and acting. So I'm doing a lot of film and television work right now. On a small level, a day player, role, nothing reoccurring as far as stunt work and acting goes. But that's my biggest thing that I kind of made the real full-time push into about 15 months ago. So it's been going pretty well. It hasn't been too bad. Obviously, I get to hang out with one of your fellow Aussies all the time, Alec Lachlan, who plays Steve McGarrett in Hawaii 5-0 here in the States.
Yep.
And so I see him because I do stunts on 5-0 all the time. So I see him probably three or four times a year, 5 times a year.
Wow.
And then and he's a jiu-jitsu guy, so we go and roll every time I come in. I bring McGee with me. We go roll jits with him and Scotty Khan.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Frank, because you've got a film coming out. It's an MMA-themed movie called Street. It features yourself and other fighters such as Matt Mitchell and Uriah Hall, Jay Hera, and Emmanuel Newton. Tell us about the movie. How does it stack up with the other MMA-themed movies so far?
Well, it's tough. A lot of people at home, you don't understand how movies are made. It's very difficult. Like, a lot of times, one, it's not shot in order. So you can actually ask Bo, who's Bo Castro, is the lead in this movie. Sometimes you don't even know really what's going on because you're shooting out of sequence. You're not shooting from beginning to end. You shoot at the end, you shoot in the middle, go back to another ending piece. You're kind of all over the place. And so my part was just with him at a fight with him in the ring in preparation for a fight. He was just training. That was my skit with it, and it was very good. His acting's very his acting's very on point. For the amount of time he's actually spent acting. You can tell that he's comfortable in front of a camera. He understands, how things are going. He understands which way he needs to go. He understands what it's like to be in front of in a live place and how to make things work. So it was great working with him. Now the other fighters, I was how do you say it? Different compartments, compartmentalized. Yeah. Anyway, it was a different compartment, so I never see the other fighters. I got stuck with just me by myself. The other fighters, Jay Hera and Matt Mitchell and those guys all came on different days, so I never saw them. So I don't know how it was from their end. And even Randy Couture's girlfriend, Mindy Robinson, I guess there was a mix-up with one of the ring card girls from the UFC was supposed to do the part, and she backed out day of. And then Randy's girlfriend is also an actress. They called her last minute. She came in like a 45-minute notice and had a pretty significant scene where she was a ring card girl, had some pretty heavy lines last set because somebody else fell out. So it's been kind of one of those movies where on the fly a lot of things had to change, but it ends up being better by the time the whole thing is going to be said and done. I think it's going to be a really good movie. It's not going to be Warrior. It's not going to have, because it doesn't have that kind of financing. The Warrior had a $50 million budget and it had Nick Nolte in it and Tom Hardy and made things a very significant film.
Yeah.
Street's not like that. It's not the same kind of budget, so it's a different kind of feel to it, but it's very good. It's still worth watching when it comes out.
Well, you've certainly piqued our interest, and it sounds like an awesome movie. We had Hoist Gracie on the show last week, and he talked about how hard acting was for him, especially the fight scenes. What was it like for you, when you're shooting fight scenes after fighting for so many years?
I'm a repetition guy. I'm very I'm very attuned to having to do things over and over again to make it work. And to me, stunt work is a dance. I'm working with a camera. I'm working with if it's a fight scene, I'm working with somebody else in front of me. We're going over a dance. So it's always about making the dance be as realistic as possible. So for me, it's always about doing the salsa. I'm always in there, based on this out there doing salsa dancing. And I try to make it look as real as possible. And so what it does is that I do it, whatever. We'll have, say it's a pretty significant fight scene. It'll be maybe 10 times. It's like, say it's day of. It's not it's not like a lot of high wire work, a lot of high pull like you see in Kung Fu, stuff like that.
Wow.
I do a bunch of repetitions. So I'll do like 10, 15 times in a row by myself. Then my partner comes in, we'll do it 10 or 15 times with no camera, by ourselves, just getting it down. And then we'll do it, 5 times with the cameras on us, just so that they get their spacing, because the camera has to get the right timing, the right motion, know where to go, when to zoom in, when to zoom out, stuff like that. And then we'll do it, 5 or 6 times per take. Because when the camera's on, and we're doing it for tape. And so by the time it's been done, everything's been done about 50 times.
Wow.
And so for me, it's very easy because I just keep repetitively doing it over and over again, including the lines, including the emotions, including the actions, including which position I feel like I'm in and which position I need to go in. Everything. We make small changes throughout it, but that's how I approach it. This is pretty much the same way I approach fight camp. Fight camp was the exact same way, and that's kind of pretty much how I approach this stuff.
Wow, the crazy world of movies. Now, speaking of your fighting career, in 2011 on the MMA Hour, you mentioned that you won't retire, you'd rather just fade away. To this day, we still haven't officially heard you say whether or not you've retired. So it feels like the plan is coming together. does that mean that we'll never see you fight again? Or is there some kind of door slightly open to see you fight one more time?
I make so much money acting like I'm getting punched in the head than actually getting punched in the head. It makes no sense. It would have to be a significant amount of money for me to come back and fight again, because I'm the middle zone of everybody. You guys, I was introduced as an MMA legend, but I'm that middle space where there really wasn't that much money being made unless you're the champ of the weight class.
Yeah.
And I was never the champ. I fought the title twice, but I never became a champ. The rest didn't really make that much money. I never made enough money to provide for my family. Like, it wasn't like they're living on a high living and had all these great things going on outside of the fight world. When I was doing it in the heyday, there wasn't that much going on other than when you fought, you got paid, and when you weren't fighting, you were maybe doing a couple of seminars, maybe doing some privates, but that was it. There was nothing else going on. And so for me now, and Jay Ron's the same way. Like, he does so much, stunt acting-wise, he kills it. And so it's like there's no real reason for either one of us to go back into fighting, live fighting, because we get paid so much to do these other things. And we're making so much more money, doing fight scenes, getting shot in the chest and getting blown through windows and getting hit by cars. It's like we get so much more money. Why bother, going back in for that low rate? And really, what do we provide for the fight scene today? Like, what really am I going to provide coming back in and fighting again? What is my actual value, my actual worth? And there isn't. It's so low, there's no point.
Well, that's interesting. It's always respectable when guys can walk away from the sport, and can support themselves and obviously do fun things like you're doing now. Just going back to that interview, you also mentioned that you're the type of guy that you'll always train for the rest of your life because you love being active and you love training and things like that. Do you still train? And if so, what's your schedule like now?
Well, I've started doing a lot of hot room work, which is like rooms that are around 100, 102 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
And we go in and we do yoga and Pilates and things like that. I do that probably 3 or 4 times a week. And then I do boxing, mitt work and heavy pad work probably 2 to 3 times a week. And then I get some rolls in whenever I can. I get some wrestling in maybe twice a week, kind of split out. But that's about all I'm doing right now, that and messing my kids. And by the time I get done with my stunt, because I still have to do stunt lessons and learn how to do different stuff within the stunt world, and then go ahead and do a bunch of acting work and really learn how to do lines and monologues and things like that. That's my week. I don't have much time to sleep even after that.
Obviously you're a guy that's really a veteran in MMA, but you also had a lot of really high-profile fights in the UFC. There's some big news that came out recently was this UFC lawsuit with former UFC employees. Just wanted to get your thoughts. What did you think when you heard about this lawsuit? Is it something that you thought about?
Well, I've known it's been coming for a long time. I knew about it, almost over a year ago that it was starting to formulate, starting to come together. It makes sense from the fighter standpoint. I honestly understand like what they're coming after and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to approach things. I really understand that. I really get it. But at the end of the day, it takes so long to get these class action lawsuits certified, at least in America. It takes so long to get these things actually to the courts. Of course, the UFC is very powerful. They're going to block every try to put injunctions on everything that comes in. They're going to delay every court, every court date. They're going to push things off. They're going to, they're going to, do what they can do to win because that's what lawsuits are about. Which side is going to win, as opposed to really which side is going to come to a compromise. I understand it, but really at this point of the game, I'm not really sure. A lot of people have asked me, "Are you going to join the lawsuit?" I haven't made up my mind. I just don't know if I'm going to get inside that lawsuit or not because it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, what's the value? Like, how much money? If I join a lawsuit, how much money am I going to make being a part of a lawsuit?
Yeah.
If I join a lawsuit, do I ever have a chance of ever commentating for the UFC ever again? If the money's enough, I might not need to worry about it. But if the money's not high enough, then why would I bother? Why would I bother, cutting that bridge? Because they wouldn't, I'm having a hard time for them talking to me now to hire me to commentate. What would they do if I'm in the lawsuit kind of thing? So it's just one of those things I got to kind of figure out and kind of go through it. But the lawsuit to me makes complete sense. But, they're talking about unions and this other thing for all these fighters, and it isn't going to happen.
Absolutely, Frank. Just from a perspective of someone who's fought for the UFC such a long time, do you think these fighters that are taking this lawsuit to the UFC, do you think they have a valid point, in taking this to court? Do you think that they have a valid reason to, get money from the UFC?
Everybody wants more than what they're getting paid. I'm sure you guys think you're worth more than what you're getting paid.
Absolutely.
And we always walk in, and the thing is you don't get paid what you're worth. You get paid what you negotiate. And that's the reality of it. If you can't negotiate a good rate for yourself, and that's your own fault, your manager's fault, you can't blame the UFC for that. The UFC is, of course, trying to keep it as low as possible. They're trying to keep that number as low as possible because they're trying to make as much money as possible. They just put a big press release just came out here in the States that they're gonna raise the pay-per-view numbers again. That the price for pay-per-views is going up again in the States.
Yeah, $5.
It's like, well, and the numbers are already coming down. Like, you think that's not going to affect their numbers now? Again, having those numbers go down again, like that's what's going to happen. But they don't. They're trying to make money like everybody else. They're trying to, Dana White was turned into a multimillionaire because of the UFC. Fertittas were already multimillionaires because of the casino holdings, and they're gonna, they're trying to maintain that money and hold that money. They're not trying to let it all go away and reduce their profit margin every year. They're trying to, keep guys as much as they can. And from a business standpoint, that's exactly what businesses do. They want to spend the least amount of money and make as much money as possible. And that's what they're trying to do with the product. And, these guys going in and going after lawsuits, they all want more money. Yeah, we all want more money. Is there a valid point behind it? Yes. Is there a valid legal point behind it? We got to wait for the courts to figure it out here in the States and let us know.
Now, Frank, you mentioned before commentating. Obviously, you've done a lot of commentating, and by the response we got from fans, a lot of fans really appreciated you commentating and were big fans. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that you wanted to also work for the UFC and do some commentating there. What's that been like? Have you approached them? Have you contacted them? Have you heard anything back? And could we possibly see you commentating in the UFC sometime soon?
I don't think it's ever going to happen, to be honest with you. I mean, it's when they first got their Fox deal, I put my name in the hat 3-4 different times. And it was brought back to me from a friend of mine and said, the higher-ups of Fox, that we love Trigg, but we want to bring guys in that are in contract. I'm not in contract, and Dan Hardy was in his contract. They brought him in, Stan, Cruz, Cormier, everyone's under contract. With from a fighting standpoint, they want to bring those guys in and have them be commentators, and that's the model they want to have, and that's what they want to do, and that's how it's working for them right now. It seems to be doing pretty well, as far as viewership goes. But I don't think I'll ever be part of the UFC commentary team. It just isn't possible right now, and that's unfortunate because I would love to. I'm doing some commentating for BAMA in England, in the UK, which is the British Association of Mixed Martial Arts, and I have a couple other small organizations that are just coming up now that are getting ready to restart their promotions again here in the States. And once they start doing that, then hopefully they'll bring me on as one of the commentators. I've already spoken to a couple of them about how that's going to happen, how it's going to work, and they seem to be okay with it, and hopefully it'll work out that way.
Absolutely, Frank. Now, just jumping to your career quickly, you were in the UFC's welterweight division, obviously, for fans who didn't get a chance to watch you. You had a lot of really interesting rivalries. You had a lot of really great fights. Your rivalries with Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, GSP, they were all spectacular and so many more in between there. What do you think it was about yourself and your personality that really brought intensity, and interest to these rivalries in the UFC?
Well, part of it was the trash talking. I mean, that's the reality of it. When you talk enough trash, people are going to pay attention. That's kind of what I was doing. In my time, when I first started for the UFC, there was 8 fights a year for the UFC. That's it. They're doing almost 8 fights a month now, sometimes. And so there's no real reason for me to sit there and talk that much or be that boisterous now. Back then we had to, because my opponent, Matt Hughes, didn't say much. Dennis Holman was another opponent, had a big lift, so he didn't talk much. And so it's kind of left up to me to do all the selling and all the pushing of what's going to happen as far as like how to sell a fight, how to make the things fight. So that was why people got behind it, because they heard the trash talking and they heard what was going on as far as like me trying to sell a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the Matt Hughes rivalry was outstanding. Definitely one of the biggest ones in the welterweight division to date. You guys fought a couple of times. On the second fight, you were particularly close to beating Matt. Everybody knows what happened in that fight. But, do you still ever think about that fight, how close you were to winning that title? And do you ever rewatch that fight and think about what could have been, if things panned out a different way?
Most people go through their lives never knowing if they went left at the fork in the road as a versus to going right at the fork of the road, they'd be millionaires. That's my millionaire fight. If I won that fight, I'd be a millionaire right now.
Wow.
Because everything that happened shortly after that fight, it changed how the format of the UFC was done, how the money was being paid, and how the UFC is being viewed. It's started getting a lot more popular. That fight was my millionaire fight. I'd be a millionaire now if I'd won that fight. That's the fork in the road. I went left, I should have went right. And that's just how it works. And there's nothing else I can do about it. I would like to forget about it, but I always get asked that question every single time I do an interview. I did an interview last night, and it was the third question they asked, and today, about 10 minutes in our interview, it's the question that you asked. It's a constant question that keeps popping up.
Wow. Now, I wanted to ask you, obviously you fought Robbie Lawler. Wanted to get your thoughts. He's obviously the current welterweight champion. You fought him back in 2007 and therefore know him better than a lot of other guys. Do you see Robbie being a long-term champion like GSP was, or do you think the welterweight division has too many killers for there to be a long-term champion?
Now that GSP is gone, it's too close. Both fights with Hendricks were very, very close. He could have won the first one, and Johnny could have won the second one. It was that close, with those two fights. So it's going to happen again where it's going to be that close and that tight. That if they fight again, it's going to happen again. It's going to be a tight fight. Anything like that will always be a tight fight. And so it's a question of who's going to be next in line, what's going to happen to the next guys in line for that title fight. And, any one of the guys in the top 5 can kind of sneak their way in there. And of course, it's still matchups make fights. And Lawler's got a style that, if you can take him down, if you can battle his takedown defense, if you can get him down to the ground, you have a really good shot at beating him. Once you get him on the ground, it can kind of hold him down a little bit. He doesn't do very well, even though he is very good at submissions, he doesn't do very well from his back. He is very good at submission defense. He doesn't do very well from his back during a fight. It's just one of his mental flaws when a fight comes around. But so far, as of late, in the last 2 years, no one's been able to put him in that position. He's just knocking fools out because he hits so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because Pat Miletich was on our show a couple of weeks ago, and he actually said that he thought Robbie could be the worst possible matchup for GSP due to striking and because GSP wouldn't be able to hold him down. You fought both guys. Do you think it's true, and do you think Robbie could actually beat GSP if GSP came back?
GSP a year and a half ago and Robbie Lawler now, GSP wins every single time without a doubt. I mean, it's not even a question. Anybody that knows the sport knows it's not even a question. The problem is GSP's out, and him trying to come back after his layoff, he's crap. He'll be lucky, honestly, because the way that the welterweight division, how tightly skewed it is, how tight that division is. GSP be lucky to break into the top 5 when he comes back. Now, will they give him a title shot right away because he demands it, because he's such a huge pay-per-view draw? Of course. But the reality of it is, GSP's not that good anymore. Johnny Hendricks pushed him as far as that he wanted to be pushed, and almost broke him in half. And personally, I think that fight should have been a draw as opposed to GSP winning the fight when him and Hendricks fought. But he realized that, hey, look, I am really getting at the end of my rope. I'm really getting the end of my athletic career. Why go out and have a win-loss, like my last 5 fights or 3-2? Why not go out on this great record as the best champion the UFC has ever had? He can walk away fine with the head held high. I think that's what you do, and I think he got out the right time.
Hey, I was going to say, in regards to your UFC run, Frank, when you signed originally back with the UFC in your second run, you signed to a 4-fight streak. Oh, sorry, you signed to a 4-fight contract, and you were released after the 2 fights, after the fights with Josh Koscheck and Matt Serra. We mentioned before your intense rivalries. Was there anybody else that you really wanted to fight in the UFC that you regret not getting the chance to step in the octagon with?
Yeah, I've always wanted to fight BJ Penn when he was up at 70. Like, I always thought that'd be a great matchup. And BJ and I are friends, and we're friends, but we respected each other even back then. Like, I just wanted to fight him in his prime because he was such a great guy and kind of all over the place and fought different weight classes. He fought Machida up at 205 and was just kind of all over. And he was just a great, amazing competitor. I always wanted to fight BJ Penn because I wanted to catch him in his heyday, not the end when we saw him, how he fought Frankie Edgar, how he fought Hughes, the last time, or how he fought GSP. I always wanted to fight BJ Penn. He's just always been that guy that one fight that kind of never happened for me.
Now, Frank, we let the fans know you were coming on the show. We've got a couple of quick fan questions we're going to ask you. The first one comes from Karaman. He or she would like to know, what was the biggest moment of your career in MMA?
The first time I stepped inside the cage of ref for ISKA out here in Nevada. I've got my refereeing, I have the amateur refereeing license to be able to ref MMA fights in California. I'm working towards my pro card. I have John McCarthy is my mentor, helped me get through the reffing and judging and understand, after being a fighter, really being inside that cage and ring is completely different being a ref. And now that I'm reffing, like, for real, I know it sounds silly, but the biggest moment for me was the first time I stepped inside that cage and I was in control of making sure the fighters were safe. That was a huge moment for me because there was basically 3 refs that could do it when I started. Larry Landless, John McCarthy, Herb Dean. That was it. Nobody else could do it. No one else could protect us when we're in there. Fighters are stupid. We'll hit each other as hard as we can. We'll elbow each other. We won't stop. If I still have one eye open, I'm still okay. I'm not knocked out yet. Screw you. I'm still good. So the refs are going to save us. So that was a big deal for me is being able to go in there and have the first time I stepped in there as a referee, being able to go, okay, look, this is I'm in control now. I've changed my view, and this is what's happening now.
Wow. And, I think it's something that a lot of people have wanted for a while now, actual ex-fighters getting in there and doing the job. Kind of like Herb Dean. Butters Stotch wants to say, hey, Frank, first want to say you are underrated as a play-by-play commentator. The UFC could add insight with you or Bus. And his actual question is, if you had a limited amount of time or energy to train someone new for self-defense with just basic techniques or movements, what would you teach, to drill or focus on the most? And obviously the purpose being to increase their ability and confidence in a self-defense situation, not a mixed martial artist. So, would you teach them a jab or a takedown or a choke or an arm lock? What would you teach the person?
Wrestling. Anything that has to do with wrestling. That is the absolute base of all martial arts. And the reason why, when everyone says, Bruce Lee in his heyday would have been great in MMA, I have to respectfully say that you're nuts. Like, it's just, Bruce Lee was an amazing actor. That's what Bruce Lee was. He was an incredible actor. Okay? He was not an amazing fighter. It just wasn't what he was. You try to bring him to MMA, doesn't make any sense. But he even said at the very before he passed away that he had to learn more about the grappling techniques. He really had to understand how to do takedowns and arm bars and chokes and stuff, because really wrestling is the mid group. That's where you control somebody when you're in wrestling. Is like, the whole purpose of jiu-jitsu is I've been knocked down on my back. Now what do I do? And that's when you get your submissions. That was the basis of jits. Is that when the Gracie brought over to Brazil, it was like, I've been thrown on my back from judo. Now what do I do? Well, arm bars and triangles and knee bars, and that's what I do. In striking, it's all about not getting hit while getting hit, but you're not really controlling you're controlling your opponent. You're trying to slow him down a little bit so you can actually hit him and crack him hard enough to knock him out. In wrestling, the whole purpose, the whole point system, the whole scoring system, the whole mentality the whole family around it is about controlling your opponent. To get a takedown in wrestling, I have to have complete control of your hips and your body. For you to get an escape point, you have to get away from my control. For me to get points for you being on your back, I have to turn your back to the mat, proving to you that you have no control. That's what has to happen. And so wrestling by far and away is the best thing to learn as a martial artist. And so I would absolutely teach every single person some form of double leg or single leg takedown the very first day of class.
Very good answer there, Frank. Now, we've got a question from MIT MCL, Mitt Miesel. He wants to know, before you spoke about the refereeing and good referees, he'd like to know, were you pissed off at all by the unnecessary uppercut Lawler hit you with while you were unconscious when you guys fought?
Okay, interesting story about that Lawler fight. It ties into reffing. I went to John McCarthy's reffing and judging class. I took the course. And I get done with the course. There's a point in there where you're talking about the effect of fighting on a fighter, what happens when his nose breaks, what happens with his blood coming out of his eyes, how, as a referee, how do you see these things and work with it? Well, then I go in, I talk to John afterwards. I'm getting prior lessons from John McCarthy still. Like I say, he's one of my mentors. He shows me my fight with Lawler. And he sets it up like this. So there's this fight. This fight goes on. There's two really high-toted guys. This one guy had fought a bunch of times in the last couple of months. He's trying to make a comeback. He retired a little bit. Retired for like 8-9 months. Got out of the sport. Comes back in. Decides that he's going to start a fight again. Runs into this guy in this really tough fight. A high-title promotion. He was the champ already. And as you watch the fight, you see him getting weaker and weaker. As you're watching this fight, you see him starting to make mistakes and fall apart that are not consistent with this particular fighter. And then he hits play, right? And that's a blank screen. I don't see it's my fight. It's a blank screen. Boom, it's my fight comes on. I'm watching. I'm like, what? Very funny, John. Oh, it's very funny. He goes, no, watch this fight. So now I'm watching it for the first time as a referee. I'm watching it for the first time as somebody needs to protect the fighter's life. I go back and look at my medical records after after I saw the fight with Big John McCarthy. I go back and see that fight. I had like 500 milliliters of blood in my lungs. I had aspirated that much blood. I'd swallowed that much blood, inhaled that much blood in that time. Now, mind you, your lungs are getting filled up with blood. You can't get oxygen to your body, so I'm starting to slow down. So you see me. So my thought process in the fight, in the fourth round, is I'm extremely tired. I told Randy Couture in my corner. John Lewis was also in my corner and said, look, guys, if this fight doesn't end in the fourth, I don't know if I can make it to the fifth. I'm falling apart out here. Like, don't worry about it. Go get it. Go get it. He goes, great. It's great. Go get it. Okay. So in the middle of the round, I go, I need a break. I need to take a cut 10, 15 seconds out to catch my breath. I put myself in the corner. That's when Robbie hits me. I am exhausted. In my head, I have my hands up. I'm protecting my face. I'm completely fine. I watch the film. My hands are down by my hips. I take 3 straight shots to the head. When he hits an uppercut at the end, I don't even feel it. I'm out. I'm already out. He stripped my vision in my left eye for like 8 months or 9 months after that fight because he hit me with my eye open. I couldn't see anything. I had no peripheral vision. In the basis of what that fight did, I went back and talked to a couple of people, talked to Big John, went back and had my doctors now look at the medical records and do all that stuff. That fight nearly killed me. If I'd gone to the fifth round, I probably would have died in a stretcher on the way to the hospital. So that fight, when Emmy goes, what was your toughest fight? The Lawler fight. What was the one fight that you regret doing? The Lawler fight. What's the one fight that you wish you could have done differently? The Lawler fight. Because that fight changed me for the rest of my career and probably the rest of my life. It's fights like that cause dementia and concussion problems later in your life and give you Parkinson's and things like that boxers are getting. It's going through a bunch of fights like that causes it. That causes that problem. So that Lawler fight is a fight that, no, was I mad at Lawler for uppercutting me? No, he's kind of a jerk anyway. He's kind of a prick anyway. So it doesn't matter. Like that's his style. That's his way. That's fine. Okay, he hit me when I was down. You have to keep going. You guys all saw the Matt Hughes 2 fight. If I fought Hughes, even though he was knocked out, his eyes were rolling back of his head, I'm looking at Mario Yamazaki to stop the fight. I'm just punching away. I look at Mario to stop the fight, and I back off. All of a sudden, Matt wakes up and comes back into the fight. Lawler took that lesson and moved it to our fight and said, look, no matter what, I keep going to the ref stops us, and he fought the ref stop him. Then Yuji Shimano stepped in, the referee stepped in there and stopped the fight at the right time. And that's when Lawler stops throwing punches. He punches all the way up until that, and he's totally fine. So I'm not mad at Lawler for hitting me that uppercut now. So I wish I had learned and had my corner to the power in a lot sooner actually the doctor was looking at my nose and like, hey, I'll stop the fight if you want to. I wish that doctor had said, you know what, I'm stopping the fight. You know, I wish you'd seen it and been more Penn stop the fight. And I could have went off and, oh, crap, you know, and would have something to yell about on the street about it. Stop the fight, do the cut, we can do a rematch, screw this, but he didn't, you know. And so I came to death's door. I stood on the door, I stood on death's door with the devil and turned it back. So I've gotten that far into this sport. I've gone from the highs to the high, to the lows to the low.
Wow, that's crazy. And, we really appreciate you giving us that kind of insight. Yolanda Be Cool wants to know, can you tell us a bit about Rumble on the Rock and your game plan going in, considering the opposition? You had, obviously, Anderson Silva, Jake Shields, Yushin Okami, and Carlos Condit. What was it like going to that one? We
didn't know anything about anybody back then. See, you guys are looking at that Rumble on the Rock tournament going, wow, this guy was great. Well, look at how good, look how good he is now. We didn't know anything. We didn't know anything we walked into that tournament. We had no clue about how good anybody else was. It was just a bunch of people getting thrown together. There really wasn't that much footage on anybody. We kind of walked in and, we had no idea. I didn't even realize Anderson Silva was actually in the tournament because he was on the other side of the bracket. So I started talking about Yushin Okami, one of the few guys that beat Anderson Silva. I was like, well, he beat him. They're like, oh, Rumble the Rock. He upkicked him and knocked him out. He upkicked Yushin Okami from his back, knocked him out, and then Yushin wins because of, it was obviously illegal to kick somebody in the face from your back. I was like, wow. So we didn't really know that much about anybody going to that match. We knew more about Shields. We know a little bit about Anderson, but we'd seen him over in Pride, and back then he wasn't as good as he was before he broke his leg. He was amazing. He was just a kind of an above average guy, but not incredible kind of thing. So we didn't really know that much. So game planning going in was the same game plan we always had: push people, wrestle them, push them as hard as we can, hit them as much as we can, and hopefully knock them out or beat them up so bad they want to quit before the fight's over.
Now, Frank, what we're going to do now to finish up the interview is we're going to do the Submission Radio Tap-Out round. Basically, it's a fun round where we throw a bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind, okay? Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so first question. Did you and Donnie ever patch things up, and do you ever laugh about it nowadays? And for people who are listening, Donnie was a guy that used to call in, I believe, when you did a radio show, and he used to sort of give you a hard time sometimes.
I couldn't even tell you. I don't remember it.
Oh wow, it was legendary. Anyway, what was your favorite company to fight for?
Oh, it was legendary. I don't remember it.
Yeah, well, all the fans were asking, like, did you and Donnie patch that up? I think there was Donnie called up this show, and I don't know, he was just really rough on you, and I think you got a bit annoyed, and you said something about him being like a guy on a couch who never got up and stuff like that. You don't remember it?
No, not at all.
If you Google Frank Trigg versus Donnie, you'll see it.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll look at it. That's funny.
Frank, back to the tap around. What was your favorite company to fight for?
Oh, geez, favorite company has is Pride. I fought for them. I commentated for them. I worked for them for a long time. Pride was obviously, for me, was the best company because I did. Remember I broke history working for Pride. I fought in the main event, and I commentated the same main event that night. So
wow.
I'm the only competitor in any sport that's ever commentated and competed on a main event of a card on television.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Pride, Frank, next question is to do with Japan. You fought in Japan for quite a few times. Give us a strange experience, a story from your time fighting in Japan.
For me, it was just when I'm fighting in Japan, I would just show up Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, make weight Friday, and then fight Saturday and go home Sunday. So the stories from Japan, when it's surrounded around fighting, were really more about when I was commentating. There's not much going on. There's not many things, because we didn't do much back then. I went in and I fought and we go home. And that's all we could really do because that's all we had time for. They kept the trips really super short. And Americans are weird. We don't think about, like, if you send a bunch of Europeans over to Japan on a free trip, to go fight and compete, whatever, and then they're you're gonna stay another week or so after. Americans are like, no, I'm gonna go right back home. Like we're there already. We don't even think about going on holiday. We think about going right back to the house. So it was like I didn't do much. The best part about going to Japan for me was I go down to the fisher's market, at like 3 a.m. because I can't sleep, and I would have tuna fish, like see them cut a tuna fish open. Literally off the boat, buy it off the boat, cut it open, right there, like these big ass, 500-pound tunas. It's like, 250 kilo tunas, like that size, and split it open. I'm eating it like 6 minutes later. Like, it's
Wow.
on my plate in 6 minutes. Like that, to me, that was incredible. That was amazing. And then, really, Japan, it was funny because, I was raised in America in the 80s when it's all about, we're always told that, Japan is trying to take us over because they're buying up all the Japanese companies are buying up all this property and stuff in California. And you go over there and you're like, wow, this is crazy. Like they're not trying to take over America. They're trying to be America. That's what they were trying to do. So it was so much fun to be over there and kind of see how old school, Japan was running around, and how you see like geisha girls and traditional samurai walking around, and people in samurai dress. Obviously not traditional samurai because those are long gone, but they're in the dress and they're very, very traditional. And then they're still have a very, very Western American style of doing things. And so you're like, you see a guy in a business suit driving a Maybach. You're like, what the heck kind of car is that? And you're seeing all these Bentleys and all these Mercedes, and these guys that go in the office and they're walking out, and all of a sudden they're in these hostess bars with these geisha girls. It's like, wow, it's incredible.
That's crazy. Anytime we ask any of our guests about Japan, they always light up. No one's ever had a bad story about Japan. Next question is, when you were in the
my worst story about going to Japan was I was having to leave. I was having to go home all the time.
Yeah.
I wanted to go there. I talked to Lenny Hart, who is she's the voice of Pride.
The crazy Pride screaming lady. Yeah, absolutely.
Love her. I love her. And Michael Chiavello actually gave her that name.
Oh, yeah.
Another Australian. This is full of Australians today, I guess, in my interview.
Yeah.
I talked to Lenny. I was like, Lenny, I don't miss Japanese MMA as much as I miss Japan. I miss Japan. Like I miss going over there and sitting down and not being able to speak the language, not understanding what anybody is saying, and being able to survive and be able to get through and really having a complete culture come over and go, oh, we get that you're a stupid American tourist and aren't smart enough to learn our language, so we're going to help you. And they come over and they help you. You're like, and Americans are pompous idiots. We go overseas and we think that, I'm in France, how come you're not speaking English? It's like, because you're in France, you idiot. Well, the same thing happens when you're in Japan. It's like, it's funny watching these guys like, I don't speak Japanese. How am I going to get around? It's because they want to help. So I miss Japan. That's the biggest thing for me is not being able to go over there anymore.
Wow, that's awesome. Going back to America, you were in King of Queens in 2006. Did you get a chance or any chances to teach Kevin James any moves?
Yeah, I was his personal trainer for about 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Boss Rutan had to take off. Boss Rutan was his personal trainer. Boss had to take off to go do a movie role for himself. And so Boss actually, it's funny. Somehow I always seem to follow Boss Rutan's footsteps. Boss asked me to train Kevin James, so I trained him. Boss Rutan suggested me for the Pride job when he didn't want to travel back and forth anymore and go back and forth to Japan all the time. So I got the job. Like Boss is secretly, kind of quietly, Boss has always kind of been a guy in my corner. He's always kind of been that guy that you need to get Frank Trigg on here, and you get Frank Trigg and do this. And he's always been that guy, and it's been kind of weird. It's been kind of surreal because you don't really know it because he never comes up and he goes, hey, by the way, I got you a job. He's not one of those guys. Mm-hmm. He's not one of those guys that comes and goes, hey, I did this. You need to go and give me a bottle of champagne. He'll just be going about his business, and all of a sudden, like 5 years later, like, this is the fourth time I've gotten something because of you. Like, thanks, man. He's like, okay. All right, thanks. That's all I wanted to hear you say thanks one time. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, good. It's just, so it's been a kind of a crazy thing. But yeah, he got me with Kevin James, and Kevin's incredibly athletic, amazingly strong, when he wants to be. And obviously things have changed because now that he's married and got kids and all that stuff. He's definitely slowed down quite a bit. But yeah, Kevin was amazing. He was great. I think Kevin, he's super athletic. I think he could have been a great fighter if he chose to go that route.
Wow. One of the last questions, Frank, because I know we're running low on time. How much did you enjoy your time in TNA doing the Angle with Kurt Angle?
Man, I loved it. I actually hit them up about a year and a half ago. Hit Dixie Carter up at TNA and asked if there's any chance of me coming back. I didn't get a response, and that's why I moved on to just stick with studying and acting because I didn't get a response. I loved that. I had such a good time with Kurt. I had such a fun time with Samoa Joe. And it's funny, too, because as I'm actually doing this interview, legitimately, my kids are on the floor right now. My 6-year-old and my 4-year-old are on the floor doing WWE.
Oh, wow.
They are huge John Cena fans. They're huge Brock Lesnar fans. They just love the WWE. And it's funny because John Cena used to be the prototype back when he was at University of Wrestling, which was out of my gym in El Segundo, California. My gym, the Raw Gym, with Rico Chiapparelli and Vladimir Mitashenko and I all had this gym together. The University of Wrestling was in my gym. That was where the ring was, in my gym. So I would see this guy coming here all the time working out, and all of a sudden now he's John Cena. He's freaking huge. He's huge. Samoa Joe was in there as well. I watched Samoa Joe. Chris Daniels. I watched Chris Daniels come through there. Like, all these pro wrestlers came through and went on to bigger things, and went on to WWE and on to TNA. And so it's been great because, I'm 42, so I'm that guy that loves, I remember, WrestleMania 1. Like, I remember, Hulkamaniac and the Hulk cartoon and Mr. What was it, Thunder Lips when he was in Rocky, when Hulk Hogan was in Rocky. Like, I remember all these things vividly, and now my kids are doing the exact same things now. They're doing the exact same things that my brother and I did. Get on the floor and ding, 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 and start the fight and start the match, and running around and dropping elbows and atomic bombs on each other, and then you turn around and they're counting down and counting out and getting a 1, 2, 3 count and then getting up and starting all over again.
Yeah, man. Me and Dennis used to do the exact same thing. Actually, we got to see Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, all those guys. They all came down in 2005, and of course John Cena for like WWE shows. Now, last question, Frank. It's been great chatting to you. I guess the Aussie fans want to know, when are you coming down to Australia to possibly do seminars or even do some stunts?
You know what? That's I don't know if you're familiar with John Donahue. He has a gym up in the Gold Coast.
Yep.
And I've been trying to get in with him forever. John actually helped start. He really was one of the first real submission guys, like real jiu-jitsu guys that grabbed wrestlers and said, "Look, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to change. This is how you do things differently. This is what's going to happen." And he did it in such a full fashion. I'm actually trying to find a way to come up there for, 6 to 8 weeks at a time on a work visa and come up there and run around and teach some seminars, but mainly teach in his gym. Be the wrestling coach at the gym. I've never been to Australia. I've never made it over there yet. And it's the last place I want to go. It's like I've hit every other place in the entire world that I want to go visit. Well, excuse me. Let me take that back. There's 2 places I haven't gone to yet. I haven't made it to South Africa, and I haven't made it to Australia. So I want to make it to those 2 countries before I pass on. I would love to come out there and teach as soon as possible. It just hasn't happened yet, and I haven't. If you know anybody that wants to bring me in or that we can get in contact with that stuff, I'd love to. I'd love to be in there in a minute, for sure. I'd love to come up to Australia and teach seminars and be in that space.
Well, we'll definitely keep our ear to the ground. And, the way you speak about Japan, I don't know if we can compete with Japan, but we've got a pretty good country down here. So anytime you'd want to come down, we'd absolutely love to have you guys. Don't forget to follow Frank on Twitter, @FrankTrigg. And, of course, you can see Frank Trigg doing plenty of interviews. There's even heaps right before UFC 183 on MMAoddsbreaker.com. Frank, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Take care. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. You too, Frank. Bye-bye.